Primetime television and feature film. You know him best as his roles of Gimli from Lord of the Rings and as Solomon from the Indiana Jones movie. Please give a warm welcome to John Rhys Davies.
Well, that's a wonderful welcome, and I thank you very, very much. Yes, it's lovely to be back in Phoenix and to be Milton quietly. But yes, I'm delighted to be here. There's an awful lot doing there. Have you nothing better to do afterwards? So, I suppose this is meant to be a panel, isn't it? You're meant to be asking questions and things like that. But, before we start, let me bore you all with my latest semi-comprehension of important things. Right. Why are young people screwed up?
Good question.
I think after 70 years of self-analysis, I understand why. It is because when the human growth spurt starts, the adolescent growth spurt starts, all the bones of the body start to grow. You get longer legs and things like that. But your skull also grows. And the brain inside has to adapt to fit a new, bigger box. And it's partly growing, but very much a question of reaccommodating itself inside. And that doesn't happen overnight. It happens roughly between the ages of 24 and 26. Now, the last two areas that grow, that enter their fine adult form, are areas around the prefrontal cortex that relate to judgment and a sense of proportion. And the amygdala, which is the sort of source and seat of raw emotions, fear, anger, despair, and all those things. So it's really not much point in talking to a 14-year-old boy and saying, why, for a dare, did you jump off the Golden Gate Bridge? Didn't you realize that it wasn't a smart thing to do? The answer is, of course, no, because he hasn't got the brain into a sort of position and in a condition where he can make judgments. And I think the consequences of this are very interesting, because, of course, what we tend to do with these young people that we now know from observation and science have no judgment. We allow them to drive, we allow them to marry, we allow them to vote, and at the age of 21 we allow them to drink. In England it's about 15. So here's my thesis. We now know that adolescence lasts a lot longer than we ever did believe. And perhaps we as a society ought to be caring for our adolescents far better and far more intensively than we ever did before. And that will really, it's a real pain in the butt, because let me tell you, as a parent, you really hope that by the time they're 18, they're off your hands and you don't have to worry anymore. Let me tell you, as a parent of a 45-year-old, a 43-year-old, and an 8-year-old, you never stop worrying about them. But if those of you who are 26 plus or 30, just look back now on the daft things that you were doing a few years ago. do you see any difference in your behavior, in your sense of judgment? Because it isn't a question of well, of course, I'm very mature for my years, or anything like that. It is quite simply the brain isn't ready yet. And if we believe that, and I think the evidence is there, though I'm perfectly prepared to change my opinions with new facts for medical people there, we really ought to be looking at things, the way we do things differently. Because there's far too many trials, suicides, depression, and things like that. And just to throw in one other thing, the cannabis debate. When I was at university, we all believed the wacky tobacco did you no harm at all. Mind you, the wacky tobacco that we smoked was 30th or 40th of the strength of what's available to you guys. Now, if you think of that cascade, that sequential cascade of chemical reactions that's taking place within each cell as it adapts to this, as it basically shifts the brain around inside the new box, the last thing you would want to be doing would be to add psychotropic drugs or cannabinoids into those equations. I think the consequence of what we know about the way the brain develops means that we really have to be far more cautious about letting young people experience drugs. If I suddenly decided that wacky tobacco was a new way of life for me now, you could measure the drop in my intelligence, and it would only be about 1 or 2 IQ points. And when I gave up, it would bounce back. Because I'm an old man, I'm well over the age of 30. But if there's something called the Dunedin longitudinal study about, they've been following people born in 1971, 72 in New Zealand. And the consequences of early drug use are really horrifying. And we're talking about 8 to 10 IQ points lost permanently. That, you might as well just stick a hot poker in their brains and scramble around for a bit. So, I suppose this is a sort of old man's remonstrance or plea or cautionary note that I put out to you today, just because I wanted to talk about it, that's all. Now we can talk about other things if you like.
For those of you that want to ask John questions, please line up. We have Rhry, who's our line moderator, and John, who's our line moderator. They will filter your questions, so go ahead and line up. As a first question while they're lining up, you've played many diverse roles throughout your acting career, over 200. What has been your favorite role that you've performed and played?
Oh, that's very simple. The next one.
Do you care to talk about that?
You see, the great thing about being an actor is the uncertainty. It's either the great thing or the terrifying thing. One day the phone will stop ringing. I won't know that I've done my last job. It's just that gap will sort of grow bigger and bigger and bigger. Oh, it's just very slack. I haven't heard from the agent in 2 years, but I think they're still alive. I'm sure something will turn up. You never know when it's over. And for some people, that measure of uncertainty breeds an insecurity that they find crucifying. Absolutely eviscerates them. I've always treated it the other way around. I'm assuming that when the next job finishes, that will be it. It's over. And so I'm going to go into it and enjoy it and have fun and try and be a decent human being for once or twice in my life and go out on a swan song. And surprisingly enough, when you adopt that attitude, there is a future. There is another phone call or an invitation. And the next job is actually Rhry, which is a new series from Fox set in ancient Egypt. which is a mixed blessing because we were meant to be in production now, and they put it off till September, which screws up the chance of playing St. Peter that I carefully lined up for the end of the year, and may actually prevent me from doing the part of a lifetime, which is a miniseries set in Malta on the siege of Malta in 1569, 1570, which is one of the great turning points in history. And I was hoping that I was going to play Jean de Valette, Grand Master, monster, bully, lecturer, inspired leader. But that may not happen now because of the late start of this wretched series. Fox, thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Oh, I absolutely loved your rendition of Gimli. I don't really like the Lord of the Rings movies very much, but Gimli, I love Gimli. I love how you did him. Can you tell any stories about working with the people in Lord of the Rings?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for... I like Gimli. He's such a lot of fun, isn't he? And I think the secret of his appeal is that he takes himself very seriously. He doesn't realize he's short. It may not have escaped anybody else that he is actually vertically challenged a bit, but as far as he's concerned, he's a giant amongst giants and bigger than most around him. When Peter Jackson was discussing how we would play things with the whole cast, the point was made, not just by me, that there was no humor in the film. I mean, it's not a very funny film, added to which it's not got a filmic structure. I mean, if you want a paraphrase of really what Lord of the Rings is about, is things are good and then something bad happens, and then, something a bit worse happens, and then actually things get quite grim. And then there's a bit of a fight. And then things get worse, and there's a skirmish, followed not long after by a really nasty battle. And then, it's sort of, the mood sort of just goes down. Well, you can't make a film quite like that. And one of the things that we decided we would do with Gimli was to make him, as it were, the lightning rod for the tension. When things were getting immensely tense, there would be this this small, belligerent, bloody-minded, egotistical, paranoid little fellow this high, making his observations about the world. But actors sometimes fall in love with their characters. Actually, most actors fall in love with all their characters, really. But I'm very fond of Gimli. I think I think he would be up there among my favourite characters. I really try to avoid that question because I've not no real new answers to give you, actually. But anyone else got another question? Oh, look, there's a line of people. Saved.
There's no one lined up on this side, so you can go ahead.
Oh, I see. That's the way they get you, man.
Hi. Handicapped.
Right.
Welcome to Phoenix, sir.
Oh, hello. That's the way they get you, man.
I just want to say I love your work as Gimli in the Lord of the Rings series, and also Sully in Raiders of the Lost Ark and Indiana Jones' Last Crusade. I was just wondering, so much of the diversity in your roles. A lot of the preparation in doing some of the more action-based sequences, like, when you're, playing Gimli, you're obviously playing someone of a shorter stature. You do that wobble really good as a dwarf, and then swing the axe around. And then from doing also your work in Sully, riding the camels, riding the horses, did you do much of that stunt work?
Well, I can actually, I can ride. My daughter does that. She's 8 and she's an expert horsewoman, and clearly, father here clearly knows nothing. I'll have to show her one or two of the movies sometime, I think. Yes, you try and do as much as you can. There are times when what no one quite realizes that film is a dangerous industrial environment. And just because you're carried along with the magic of being on a film set with great stars and great directors and things like that, does not relieve you of the responsibility of actually thinking and making judgments. In the end, it always comes down to judgment. There are times when you look at a setup and you say, yep, fine, I can do that. The risk is minimal, and you've calculated the odds and you've gone through all the props and things like that you need. There's not going to be a major job doing it. But there are times when you go and think, you know what, the risk-reward ratio here isn't smart. I remember I was doing a show, and I've got an idea, it might have been, oh gosh, I think it was probably The Untouchables or something like that. Anyway, the idea is that it is night time. The van pulls up, the doors open, there's a little bit of illumination inside the van. We jump out, we spin, and we run towards the house, and just about the time we get to the fence of the house blows up. So we're doing this in little bits and pieces. So we've done the jump out a few times, we've done the close-ups and this sort of thing, and now it's time for the master shot with the house blowing up. At which point I say, I tell you what, this is time for the stuntman. And there's a young director there, and he said, why? And I said, well, look, I tell you what, I had a plane crash in 1985, and I've been jumping out of this van now for the last half hour, and this broken leg here is aching me. Beside which, this is going to be seen on a 20-inch television set, or a 22-inch television set. It's night time, it's a wide shot, you've got your close-ups, you've established it. Why would I want to? Are you a coward? Yes, indeed. I've learned through experience that explosions can go wrong. So if you don't mind, and God bless them, behind this young and very inexperienced director, there were 2 producers going. And I said, I tell you what, you can do this without me. So I'm going to go to the trailer now, and you can get the double. He's ready. That's how he earns his keep. He can do it. This disappointed the director immensely. I don't think he ever worked with me again. To be honest with you, now that I think about it, I'm not sure he ever worked again. But anyway, the stuntman put the beard on and all that sort of thing. He jumped out of the van. He spun, right in the face, obviously. He spun. He ran towards the house. As he gets to the fence, the house blows up, and he loses all the hair and skin off his face. The heat of it just melted his eyebrows, melted his beard, the false beard, and all that. And it didn't hurt him. It didn't do major damage to him, but if it had been me, I certainly wouldn't have been able to work for a week and a half or something like that. And you just look at the director and say, now do you understand? I remember working with a very great director. The man who directed Patton, Lord, Anyway, we were doing a cavalry charge, and he said to me, Johnny, look, you know, you're about the only one of these actors who actually can stay on a horse. Do you think you can actually do this charge? And I said, yes, sure, but you know what? I want to be in that head-on shot. I want to be at least 100, 200 yards ahead, because I've got 80 Italian stuntmen and 400 Arab doubles behind me. And if my horse goes down, I want to be able to get up and try and get out of the way. He said, there's no problem. You're coming to wish. It's a long shot. It's a charge about a mile across the plain. And, you know, I can pick you up and all that sort of thing. Fine. So we did the shot. And we did it 2 or 3 times. He said, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Now, Johnny, I need to do a sign-on shot. And so you can only be about 25 yards ahead. I said, you know what, sir, I think this is the time for the double. And he said, perfectly understand, perfectly understand. So I sat there and watched as my Spanish double, who was born in the saddle, I mean, just a magnificent rider. A stray horse cut across him, pushed his horse into a bush, he went off, and 400 horsemen rode over him. And you're sitting there and you're going like that, and part of you is going, oh my God, and the other part of you is going, got that right, didn't I? Arm out through there, knee out through there, split here, and he, the way all stuntmen are, he was all bravado. I went and visited him in the hospital and bought him a bottle of plonk, and I said, I'm awfully glad it was you, not me. He said, no problem, no problem. But you know, it's a dangerous business, and you have to be able to make the right call. Of course, when you're young, you sometimes don't make the right call, and with luck, you survive it. But I've known actors who didn't. Anyway, sorry about that. That was completely off the point, wasn't it? I'm getting rather good at that. Right. Next question.
We actually have a question in the far corner.
Somebody in the dark down here.
First, thank you for being here, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mummy. Yes.
Were you even approached to be in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull?
Yes, I was actually. The request went out for me to. They're going to send. I was working in Hungary at the time. They're going to send a second unit director out and green screen it. I'm sure you're all film buffs enough to know green screen. And the idea was, I came in, I sat down in a chair, I smiled, and I clapped. And they were going to cut that into the wedding sequence. I thought, you know what, that's very sweet to be remembered, but I think the character of Salah is worth a bit more than that. You know, he's... And God bless him, and he's possibly the only heroic Arabic figure in Western films since about 1950 onwards. So, you know, we had to do something for him. So I said no, actually, so it really is my fault. But I don't regret it. As I told, last time I saw Steven Spielberg, I said to him, so Steven, now, let's see now. 4 Indiana Jones films, 1 fabulous, 2 okay, 3 fabulous, 4 okay. Now, what is it that's missing? You have the grace to laugh, anyway. What a director, what a stunning director. And, but let me also make an observation that times have changed, and Spielberg has changed. The innocent young Hollywood director who did Raiders of the Lost Ark, where the nasty Nazis are really goofballs, really. I mean, they're stick characters. He himself has come to recognize the reality of evil as his life has moved on, and he's done show